Welcome to the Woodpreneur podcast, the best podcast for the business and marketing side of the sawmill, lumber, and wood industry. What's a woodpreneur? If you have a business where you make money as a woodworker, sawmill owner, selling slabs, or a content creator, then you're a woodpreneur. My name's Steve Larosiliere, and I started Woodpreneur Life, Acres of Timber, and the Woodpreneur podcast just for makers, wood entrepreneurs, and small business owners just like you. We're on a mission to empower thousands of wood businesses to grow sustainably and put out great products. Each week, I interview makers, sawyers, content creators, and 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs that know the wood industry inside and out. With topics covering everything from the urban lumber movement, sustainable sourcing and design, we'll discuss the ins and outs of how to grow, monetize, and fully immerse yourself in the woodpreneur lifestyle. If you're a hobbyist, a full-time wood business owner, part-time entrepreneur who wants to become a content creator, or quit your day job to pursue your dreams, the Woodpreneur podcast is just for you. Thanks so much for listening. Now enjoy this episode. Hey, welcome to a brand new episode of the Woodpreneur podcast. This is your host, Steve Larosiliere. Today's guest is Aaron Cash from Fine Line Millworks. How you doing, Aaron?
Doing great. How are you?
Great, thank you. Thanks for hopping on. Tell us about the Fine Line. How'd you get started?
Yeah. Well, I'm half of it. I am co-partners with Nick Allman. We both kind of had our own journey to today, as everybody does. When I was young, I grew up in Southern Indiana. We are based out of Indianapolis, but I grew up in Southern Indiana. My grandfather was really into the just make it work. He's just I consider him. He's passed away, but he's like we never hired anybody to do stuff for us. So our minds kind of worked that way. Like nobody's coming to pick up the boats, so let's figure this out. And so that was kind of really my only exposure to the trades, to be honest. But I went through school, kind of like an average person, but I like to draw. I was good at art, and so 98 is when I graduated, and I was raised as a Southern Baptist type of culture in Southern Indiana, and so that was like as my world grew, my questions grew, and all of that, and so I spent a good amount of my time in my 20s kind of hopping around jobs. At the same time, I got married when I was really young, started having kids. I had 3 kids in my 20s, and like life was kind of going one path, and I always kind of wanted to go out on my own and make stuff, but I didn't finish school, I didn't do a lot of those kind of things. But ultimately, I just kind of ended up starting my own business. I worked for a builder. He hired me from Home Depot. And at Home Depot, I didn't know anything, but I kind of had a chip on my shoulder, to be honest, because I didn't finish college. I had kids young. So I read the back of every box, every magazine. I just got into it. And then I started drawing kitchens. A builder locally said, "Hey man, you want to come and he also owned a hardware store. He's like, you want to be kind of my assistant?" I said, "Sure, man. It's better than working weekends." And so I kind of got on that path. That's like my 20s. And he would basically have me draw kitchens up. And he was just an old school guy, ran a hardware store, taught me a lot about customer service and just doing it right. But he was a little ahead of his time, I think, in some of his concepts, because he ended up being this really bright mind out of this small hardware store, and he was building $1 million houses out of too. I don't know how to explain him, but he was just a very unique person. That all being said, is he introduced me to the trades, and he kind of cultivated this drawing cabinets and getting involved in working with your hands. And I needed to provide for my family, so I couldn't go and just be an artist. So I started working on renovations, learning things the hard way, always trying to be like, man, I want to make what I'm drawing. And for me, I love rooms that inspire you. I'm everybody is particular in their own way, but I know if it feels right, and when it doesn't feel right, I tend to obsess about how to fix it. And that's not always good being profitable, but you learn a lot of really hard lessons really quickly. And for me, that it resulted in, I started a custom cabinet shop. We would get pretty cool jobs. I had ideas about how we could make it, but I wasn't a good enough leader, or we didn't have the right mix of people or whatever. And it just kind of, I would have great opportunity, but I didn't think that we were really making what I wanted to make in the way I wanted to make it. I think like part of winning is like your customers need to be excited about you in the process. And so if you get to the end and everybody's like, yeah, this is great, but it was like war getting there, that's not right. And so all of those things make me obsessed, to be honest. Like that's just my personality. I don't try anything that'll kill me because I know I might obsess about it. And so this is like small business, like doing stuff like that is like, I'm like, how do we make this work? How do we make the process from the customer's point of view work? And I say all this long story because that was like I had a vision for a company, and that started with like a me journey. And I didn't want to break it up. I didn't want to like whatever, but really I had team goals, and I needed to find somebody that could say, hey, this is how we do this and do it scalable. And so right before 2020, we've had some really cool cabinet projects. Wasn't sure if we could execute them on the right level. Kind of let everybody go that was working for me, and was just going to kind of reset. And my business partner, Nick, who is a graduate from the Heron School of Art at IUPUI here, a furniture maker, he would do these like one-off $50,000 tables for the city. Custom veneer, I mean, all over across, I mean, just really, really good, but not super scalable. Slow, get to sell when he's making all these traps that we use. And so our put us together when we started talking. We were in the same building. I was in a maker space at the time. We put us we kind of right before COVID hit. We sat down and I was like, man, what if you like helped me make this? Because I'm trying to solve this problem. It was in this particular house. The owner is probably going to watch this because he's like good friends now. But he invested in this house as a lifetime house. It's called the Plus House. It has its own Instagram page, and it's made like Haller and Yoon out of Boston are the architects. Eric Haller like specifically designed this house, and it's really made around this idea of knife edge features on the outside of the house to make wide structures look thin and force perspective. So imagine a plus. It's very cool. But the whole idea is that the cabinets press in at the plus, and then all the furniture will like fit the house. Call back to like I love rooms that inspire. So I'm trying to like hit a home run on this. So I go talk to Nick. He's the best maker I know, and he literally looks at me. He's like, "We should just put our businesses together." He was
That's
like, "I don't
so
know why we
cool.
wouldn't do that." And I basically said, "Hey, look, I don't think we could do this. I don't think that we're gonna be able to do this." He fought me over it. End of the day, we kind of just like said, "Oh, let's try it."
Hmm.
And that's when COVID hit. COVID hit a month after we started Fine Line Millworks, with the idea of taking these basically houses like the Plus House that are very custom, um, I don't know how to say it, but Ken DeCosta is a good friend. He does similar type of work where
Hmm.
it's like all of the cabinetry is a kind of an inspiration of the house, but then the furniture matches. And so that was the whole premise of making Fine Line Millworks. From there, we had a whole nother journey of figuring out how to make it predictably, uh, which we can get into if you want. But to be honest, like that is the putting us both together. That was the whole premise behind starting Fine Line.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And I get it. Your obsession with space and product combined with fine craftsmanship and detail oriented like really kind of put you guys together. And I'm looking at this fine line, this plus house, Daniel Neely, right? Um,
Mhm.
that's a beautiful house. That's a beautiful house.
You have to see it to see what I'm trying to describe. That's why I spent so much time like describe, because we've really pressed for the best, and we're kind of on the edge of our skills a lot of the time. Um, but that's how you make places that inspire people, to be honest.
Absolutely. So, I mean, talk about, so how did you bounce back from COVID, or how did you make it more
So
productive?
that's a really fun story, and it's much quicker to get through than the first one. But um, so here's my I have I'm a if you think of myself and Nick Allman put together yin and yang, but we're kind of looking at the same vision, but we just 100% different perspectives of where we're looking at, and it does help us. Sometimes it's hard on us, but that really is usually worked to our advantage. And in COVID, it certainly did, because when you're starting anything new with big aspirations, which we have, then it's not like the marketplace just lets you in. Like, you've got to solve a problem. You got to be easier, quicker. Like when you're for
Great experience.
whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
all of that takes runway, by the way. So the problem is to get how do we get to the place where people think of us naturally? You got to like elbow your way in. And for us, and this is really what helped Fine Line, it kind of holds us back now, but in the beginning it helped us, was we laid out on a white paper. We're at my office right now. I work from home because the machines are too, I'm on Zoom all the time. And that kind of goes to part of our process, which is, in my experience in the industry, one of the key components that is underserved and we try to overserve is we basically go in and don't build on assumptions. We assume that when people come to us, everybody comes to us with different things in their mind they're imagining, and sometimes it's just a blank slate. And to me, that is a 0.0. That's infinite. There's no constraints. And so that partly pushes people, and I need help, but you've got to have a process that makes that go from a 0.0 to a 1.0. And then the 1.0 can be filtered yes or no to a 2.0 to eventually you get that. And that was basically the premise of what I wanted to set up as a business structure and experience for Fine Line in the beginning. So we started just mapping out a customer experience. White pages, step one, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? That for me is saying, hey, how do we verify the information to be accurate? So then obviously we got to have a place where we go verify. So we don't want people don't just let you in your home. So what we decided to do is they can go to this day, go online. You want to work with Fine Line Millworks, you can click on our website. It will automatically give you some good enough form that you schedule a free 15-minute meeting, 30-minute meeting with me via Zoom, that you fill out what's my budget, what's my inspiration, what's my space. In 30 minutes, without traveling to your space, I can figure out if we're a good fit, because I know our rules of thumb of where we should be. And then I'm like, I can be super transparent, figure that out. That's a loss leader for us. Fine, no problem. But I can get what I'm trying to do is, what is everybody thinking? If they want to work with us, we charge for our time. So design fees and stuff are billable, but I can kind of guesstimate at that. But with the whole idea that I'm going to create a concept unverified of what I think you're telling me you're imagining, so I can price it. Sometimes you have a designer that's giving it to us, but in that case, that's what we were trying to do. And then from there, the goal is to like, oh, this is basically what we want. We're going to check and balance. I'm going to hand it over to Nick. He's going to come out and actually measure the space, measure make sure that the concept matches what is the constraint of the space, redraw it for production. Then we go to production. That's like our experience. If the first thing starts with Zoom, so we go lay that out, COVID hits, and how are we going to connect with people in 2020? Well, I just happened to have a roadmap of
Zoom.
like, oh
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
we got to like push people online, like the people that aren't letting us into this circle, like, like they're having to figure out maybe the same answers that we've already got. We just won't, we're not as loud as them, but maybe this creates space for us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just kind of started that way of working through that. And it wasn't fast. It was not fast. We were like, you know, it wasn't like lots of money going into this and going out. It was enough to pay the bills and let us get that runway to figure out and get like our clients to think of us when they have a project that fits us. We needed that time to crank out product and people see it online. Oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah.
cool. So that's how we got through COVID. Was it literally like played all of our strengths. We got lucky.
What did and I know that there was a lot of emphasis on the home or business or like stuff in the interiors. What did you lead with a particular product or a skill set or a solution that you were trying to solve? Did you lead with that?
Honestly, in our area, people think of us for cabinetry, right? Like now, we're trying to challenge that. We're going in different directions. It's still each level has its struggles, but we really started off with like the plus house, and then some house places after. Well, what ended up happening was we did the plus house. We figured out how to make it all happen. It looked good. We learned a lot. We learned about process, how to get our what our numbers would look like, how we should make the stuff to be profitable, and we had to refine that a lot in the beginning. But what we got lucky with is that we started working with a local builder. They were feeding us work, ended up being almost 100% of our work for 1 year. So then what ended up happening is like our delays became their delays became our delays. There was no real diversity, and that's not going to play to anybody's strengths. So we had to solve through that. But through that relationship, we got to do the HGTV Urban Oasis being built in Indianapolis, and they asked us to design a custom vanity for Kohler and then their cabinets. And we obsessed about it and drew this one up. You can see it on our feed. But we just tried to, for us, a lot of our product, it looks simple until you see what it takes to make it. So during that time, we would just share the story of the build as transparently as possible, not for clicks, but for the people that are buying our product to retell the story, to get excited about it, just kind of making that experience. And in doing that for that small project, right during COVID, probably mid 2020, we finished it. It was great. Got to know the hosts became friends. That was awesome. He goes and to go do the dream home in Vermont, can't find people to go, and we're set up to work and deliver remotely if we need to, like at a high level. So they called us and said, hey, Aaron, can you come out and do that same process we did, because we need something cool in the middle of this house. So I think it was 2021 dream home, maybe in 2020. It's still out. All this is on their website. We got to do the interior finish work. So we did this like Murphy bed wall. It had to be done on a budget, obviously. They asked us to design and build this mud room that was like Vermont ski lodge meets shiplap 2.0. That's what they give you, and then we draw it up and make it. But that being said, we got free exposure for that. Like they paid for that product. And
That's
so
awesome.
that was all like super lucky. And then from there, at the end of 2021, probably at that time, the host went to the Magnolia Network, and he was Brian Patrick Flynn's his name, and he had us do their personal their basement, like design these like cool things. But they showed our process on the camera. Flew me in. I got to draw it, model it, interview, and I mean, we weren't regulars on the show, but we got to get this free like exposure on
Yeah.
these just highly viewed things, and that was the runway we needed for people to think of who Fine Line was and legitimize. To see what I'm like kind of
Yeah, no,
going
no,
with it.
absolutely. It's like you leverage these big networks to show your process that you've dialed in for quite a while, and you set yourself up to serve, like build and serve wherever, right?
That's what
And
we're trying to do.
yeah,
But
yeah,
at least we showed people a 1.0 of it,
for sure.
because otherwise they're just kind of guessing. And so that ended up being like, I tell my kids this. I told them when they graduated high school, I was like, look, the world's going to give you a lot of advice and it works over the averages. But if you take all of it, you're going to have an average life. Eventually, you got to like bet on yourself and just make it work. And the truth is that I could never draw that up for somebody. Like I didn't even know that that was going to be our path. We just made the most of opportunities because we and learned a lot in between. Like it was a lot of work to do that, but that is the story basically of Fine Line. And then from there, we also, like, after COVID was over, then Nick had a lot of relationships with universities and high-end architects for doing these tables. So then that commercial work came back and we started getting these really cool one-of-a-kind tables, like 35-foot boardroom table where we're pressing the veneer, doing whatever, or like a centerpiece of, if you're familiar with Columbus, Indiana, it's like known for art and inspiration. We got to put centerpiece tables in the new university building that it was like an award-winning building. That all came back after that, and it like I couldn't have drawn that up, but people respected Nick's talent. We had a process to get it done,
Yeah,
and then those opportunities opened up.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Tell what does your day to day look like right now?
So for me, you see it right here. I'm right now. We are a small company. We're 5 people. Like that. We're not big. People can imagine whatever, but we're still figuring out like how to scale really custom work, because what they don't tell you is you end up with like these places where you're working with a builder. They're not used to doing this level, maybe, or whatever, and they have a spin. So you can't really put jobs back to back, like kicking out widgets. And so you start figuring out, all right, well, how do we have a mix to put the stuff in between? Because that's more scalable or whatever. So a lot of my day is figuring that out. All right, these people had to move a little. What do I have to do to make that work? And then, I mean, I'm a big reader. I like, you got to work on your business, not just in your business. So I do try every day to think about like, all right, who should we be? Like, I mean, nobody's lived tomorrow, so we're all guessing a little. And so I think it's really good to think about like, who could I be? What could we do? So for us, we have developed a new product that we're going to try to sell through our website. We think of like Fine Line Light, like it's not as, and so that's been the last 6 months. I'm spending a portion of my day. We've developed it. We did a soft launch. It's like worked decently, but the whole idea is, do you want to see it
Yeah,
really
for
quick?
sure. Yeah, for sure.
So it started with this like panel system. But it hangs on a French cleat. But basically, what we want, and we did these brass inserts, but we've done this with like, you'll see this, like obviously like veneer panels and stuff. But what we want to be able to do is basically people can buy these off of our website. This is the same type of system. We won't sell this on our website, but you can hang it and then just do frameless cabinets next to it. It's not really meant to go around corners, but just think one wall
Mm-hmm.
that is like, all right, you got this cool deal. But what it allows for us is that we can make our own kind of version of these solutions for these different spaces. And then over time, we can use that panel system once it's on a grid to be able to just develop accessories that people can buy, and they can take it with them. So for the last 6 months, we've been working on developing something that's like not just what the next cabinet shop has to offer.
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
different. So
Yeah. I mean,
that's what I do.
instead of like a 30K, 40K kitchen,
Right.
right? Like they can spend like 1 or 2K and like outfit a room, and it has your brand on it, and you grow with
Similar
them.
to that. It'll be more expensive. I'm sure people could value engineer what we have made, but we're thinking like, so here's a good example. And maybe this is helpful to people trying to make a business, because these are the things that I think about is I had a customer come in and said, "Hey, I'm not in my forever house." We will be, but we're not yet. But I still kind of want you to do this mud room. We usually our social stuff's like 6 months in the rears. So I know everybody's happy. But they came in and said, "Hey, we have this builder grade locker system and a little pantry. We would like some of your product." We go through our system and it comes out to be like 30K, 40K for us, which is like, I mean, it's a premium if they wanted us to make it like art, but that didn't fit the house, so we would not have gotten that sale. I'm like, oh man, I'm working on this product. Talk to Nick. I'm like, Nick, do you mind if I redraw it in the system? I go redraw it in the system with the idea that it is like can be DIY'd installed. It's like it looks like a fine end product. We can bake in the quality, but we can actively use what we know from experience to push the price down without giving too much. So I redraw it in the system, and we do both rooms installed for 20. So it was half of
Yeah.
what that is. And part of that, if like I'm thinking garages, things
Yeah.
like that, where people aren't investing unless it looked really nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I honestly I wish more woodworkers would just try different stuff
Yeah. No, I
instead of just
agree.
competing over the same stuff.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of overlaps too. I mean, case in point, your story is like you could have stayed by yourself and your pride
Yep.
could have allowed you to just obsess, and you would have stayed this particular type of business and, had a decent living, but or you found somebody that complimented you. And, it's like, 2 plus 2 equals 5, right? Or 1 plus 1 equals 4, right? It's just like you, the, and I find that a lot in the woodworking industry. It's like there's a lot of pride in being able to say that I own this, I did this, and you're like, and you said it during this interview. It's like you had to go in and solve people's problems, and you had to understand and not make assumptions, and so that's a really really great story. Hey, okay, so this is a part of the podcast where I give you any marketing or business advice. Is there anything you want
Yeah,
to brainstorm or think through that I can help you out with?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. And I'm sorry I've talked a lot, but I think that people can relate a little bit to just like a story of just like from your garage to five people even, you
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
uh, and so with that being said, for me, um I'm always trying to figure out what is the best tomorrow for Fine Line look like. And where to innovate. And our number one problem right now is I just described it is we have these big opportunities. It's hard to get them back to back. Obviously it's hard. We got a lot of automation as much as we can. We leverage that a lot, and that's let us just be smaller. But I want I guess it would be easy for me to create more sales,
Hmm.
but I would lose on the process because I don't know if we've got that as like, we're not, if Tesla started making the amount of cars they're making today early on, it would have crashed the company.
Yeah.
It'd have been too heavy.
Yeah.
And so my question to you is understanding that, and obviously that's why we don't market a ton, is to not create too much. How would you solve some of those problems?
So the question is, you have a lot of bigger opportunities, but how do you fill those bigger opportunities with things in between that don't break you?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. I'm not sure. I'm trying to navigate these big opportunities, and there's things that come along with them that are heavy.
Sure.
You got to float them. You got to do all this stuff, and then you.
Well, a question to you, back to you, is like, what is a product and or service that you can do with your eyes closed that is probably right in front of you that you are not necessarily you're overlooking? Like, what's something that you can do with your eyes closed that really lends itself to doing more of? It's just easy. You got this process dialed. What is that?
So it's frameless cabinetry.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can just kick that out, but the problem is we don't have like the scale of machines to
Mm-hmm.
compete in a frameless cabinetry world on price or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But what about? I mean, the thing that I think about is, so I'm looking at your large centerpiece tables. Could you do smaller tables for smaller companies, smaller institutions, or dining room tables that you can, that's almost like your, French cleat system, but just like is an entry point to, like, you get somebody's dining room and then it goes into the kitchen right after? Like, could you have a $7,000 to $12,000 table, right? Could you, instead of a $50,000 conference table, could you do a $17,000 to $22,000 conference table? Like, and that is something that takes half the amount of time. You kind of have it dialed, and you can do more of that. Is that, like, that's something that I think about? Is that, like, because if you are targeting a business owner or a GC, maybe you could bypass the whole GC architect and go directly to somebody that needs a conference table for their small to medium sized business, and then it can lead into other things. You seem like the type of person that has you're good at keeping relationships and doing a good
Mm-hmm.
enough job that people want to continue doing business with you. So, like, that's the first thing that comes to mind, is like, how do you um take what you normally do and pare it down so that it's not necessarily a new product, that you can fine tune it so that it could just be a more it's like a it's not a loss leader. It's like a lead magnet to your other higher end products.
Yeah, and I appreciate. I love hearing Ken DeCosta is one of in the business, one of my best friends.
Yeah.
We talk all the time, and we have these kind of conversations, which are great, and we end up in these same spaces. Here's what's an interesting thing that constrains that a little bit, that I've just from my experience, is you start with the premium product, and then you start to engineer down from that, but you've told people to expect a premium. And so you end up in this, like, where people in our area, there's people that are kicking out just widgets of cabinets, and that's fine. It's all on a spectrum, but they're not going to be able to make what we make. But as soon as we start getting in their world, they can go lower than we can even ever think of. And so I get into this, like, we've run that down a little bit, and I've always wondered. I mean, it's a fine line, right? Like, it just ends up in this place where you got to find just the right space where you're custom enough and
Yeah.
modular enough to make it work.
Well, to me, I would look at, like, take a bunch of your conference tables and put them on a one sheet and put the logos of the places that you've done this with, and then just say, and I would reach out to, I don't know if you're part of any, if make a list of 30 business owners that that have employees, they're back in the office, they're doing all of these things, and just saying, hey, look, we normally do tables for really large institutions, and we'd like to test out doing it for small to medium sized businesses, because we believe that they deserve, like, you guys deserve premium quality product. um, would you be open to having a 15-minute call, and I could look at your table and see if it's the right fit for us to make a table that's not 50 feet long, 30 feet long, or whatever, that and I would give that a shot. And I bet you could probably make a couple sales if you make 30 people based off of what you've done before.
Yeah, I wrote that down. I appreciate that. That's
Yeah.
as a small business owner, you're kind of walking in the dark,
Yeah.
and so it's just super easy to not see other obvious things
Yeah. Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's great.
Cool. Awesome. Well, let me know how that goes. All right.
Yeah, I will.
All right. Cool. Thank you. Give us your website and your Instagram so folks can follow.
Yeah, we're at finelinemillworks.com. And then on Instagram, it's fineline.millworks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to sharing your podcast with the Woodpreneur community.